Picture staring up into a perfectly spotless blue canopy over the Middle East, feeling the dry heat of the afternoon sun baking the concrete. In a matter of heartbeats, that tranquil ceiling is destined to become a sprawling ocean of fire. Right across the water, Iran has just sealed its own doom, launching an all-out storm of 38 ballistic and cruise weapons aimed directly at the most vital American military hub in the region. The men in power over in Tehran are probably cheering, patting themselves on the back in their secure rooms. They honestly think they have just masterminded a brand new Pearl Harbor. They are dreaming of 11,000 American casualties, picturing a graveyard of B-52 Stratofortresses and F-35 stealth ghosts reduced to burning rubble. They are betting heavily on a swarm tactic, convinced that absolutely no defense grid could ever catch every single piece of flying metal. But arrogance is a terrifying blindfold. The cold, hard reality is that the exact moment the very first Iranian weapon lifted off its launch pad, a ticking clock started. And that clock was counting down the remaining lifespan of their entire military arsenal. The United States does not freeze up, and it certainly does not ask for peace talks. Before those warheads even reached their cruising altitude, the watchful eyes of the United States Space Force had them totally pinned in just 4 seconds. This is not going to be an even brawl. It is going to be a mechanical execution, a display of absolute technological dominance so chilling that it will freeze the blood of any foreign adversary. 44 minutes. That is the entire window needed to reduce their national pride into nothing but scorched pits in the earth. Say hello to Operation Desert Hammer, a brutal seminar on what happens when you test the unrestrained fury of the reigning global superpower. Do not blink, because this is how you erase a hostile empire before dinner. Let us take a quick trip to the map. Just 48 miles southwest of Doha, Qatar, sits Al Udeid Air Base. This is not just a runway in the sand. This is the absolute nervous system of American military muscle in the area, housing 11,000 personnel and acting as the main stage for the 379th Air Expeditionary Wing. It is the forward brain for United States Central Command. This place is packed with mechanical beasts. We are talking 40 F-15E Strike Eagles ready to tear the sky apart, 24 F-35A Lightning II stealth ghosts, 8 B-52 Stratofortress bombers that can flatten entire skylines, and a whole flock of MQ-9 Reaper drones waiting in the shadows to deliver precision justice. To the strategists in Tehran, this base was a massive problem, a towering monument to a power they desperately wanted to break. So, at 1 in the afternoon on that specific day, their Supreme National Security Council locked themselves in a room and embraced pure delusion. Feeling the crush of global sanctions and hating the American naval ships parked in their backyard, they made a choice that will go down as the most unhinged military gamble of our time. They decided to strike Al Udeid in the broad daylight. They did not just want to crack some concrete. They wanted a bloodbath. They wanted the world to watch the United States Air Force bleed out in the desert, hoping the sheer shock of it would make America pack up and abandon the Middle East for good. By 1:45 in the afternoon, 6 different strategic launch sites across their country started waking up like predators in the brush. At the Karamabad facility, 6 Shahab-3 weapons were raised into the air. Over at the Kermanshah complex, 8 more of the second-generation Shahab-3s were prepped for fire. Desfo rolled out 6 Sumar cruise variants designed to fly low and hide in the radar clutter. Tabriz brought out 4 heavy Karamshah rockets. Com prepped 8 Ahmad types, while the Semnan Space Center armed 6 cutting-edge Kibar Shaken models. That makes 38 warheads in total. It was a calculated cocktail of long-distance rockets and low-flying terrain huggers, all moving at different speeds and angles. Their math was simple. They thought if they threw enough at the wall all at once, the American targeting computers would simply freeze up and let the fire rain down. At 2:10, just 5 minutes before the trigger was pulled, their aerospace commander looked at his monitors and bragged that they were about to rewrite global power dynamics. He thought he had the winning hand. He was dead wrong. They made massive, fatal miscalculations. First, they picked a fight with the most aggressively shielded piece of real estate on Earth. Al Udeid is locked down by 4 Patriot batteries, 2 THAAD high-altitude systems, and 6 C-RAM units that act like giant metal buzzsaws, chewing through the sky with thousands of rounds a minute. Second, and this is the mistake that cost them everything, they forgot that American eyes never blink. Exactly 4 seconds after that first burst of rocket exhaust lit up the Iranian launch pad, United States Space Force infrared satellites had already screamed a red alert across the globe. The element of surprise was dead in 5 seconds flat. Put yourself in the shoes of an Iranian launch officer. You push the button. You watch tons of explosive steel climb into the clouds. You feel like a conqueror. But what you completely failed to grasp is that your fate was sealed before the smoke even cleared the ground. At 2:12, those Space Force satellites orbiting the Earth did not need to ask for a manager's approval. They saw the heat signatures immediately. Within those 4 tiny seconds, radar screens back in Colorado and Maryland had the whole picture. Tehran thought they were sneaking through the tall grass, but they were actually standing in an empty stadium with all the spotlights pointing right at them. Supercomputers instantly chewed through the speed, the angle, and the destination of every single piece of flying metal. The screens flashed the terrible truth: 38 inbound, target Al-Udeid, impact arriving soon. Back at the base, the lazy afternoon quiet was shattered by the worst sound a soldier can hear. The air raid sirens started screaming. This was no practice run. Over the loudspeakers, the voice of survival barked out that inbound rockets were on the way and everyone needed to hit the bunkers immediately. 11,000 mechanics, pilots, and cooks had mere minutes to outrun a fiery death. But nobody lost their minds. They moved with the kind of icy focus that only comes from endless, grueling practice drills. Planes worth billions were shoved into thick concrete garages. Heavy blast doors slammed shut. But America does not just hunker down and take the hit. While the humans went underground, the robotic guardians woke up. The Patriot systems, the THAAD launchers, and the C-RAM guns turned their mechanical heads toward the edge of space, locking onto the hypersonic black specks dropping from the stars. While the attackers were relying on ancient aiming technology, the defenders were using a network that spans into the cosmos. At 2:13 and 15 seconds, the sky over the base started to violently tremble. It was not the enemy landing. It was the American interceptors leaping off their pads, drawing thick white chalk lines across the blue. The massacre in the clouds was an absolute masterclass in lethal engineering. At 2:15, 4 Patriot groups roared to life. Their PAC-3 missiles do not even bother carrying explosives. They are designed to smash into the enemy warheads so hard and so fast that everything just vaporizes into dust. 32 Patriots tore upwards. Up at an altitude of 100 kilometers, the first Iranian rocket was shattered into a shower of burning rain. Then another. Then another. The pride of Tehran's military was being turned into airborne garbage before it even saw the ground. Then the THAAD systems joined the choir, picking off the high flyers. 2 of the Ahmad rockets, the ones the attackers proudly called their destroyers, were casually swatted out of the air 30 kilometers up. It was a complete humiliation for their defense industry. And what about those sneaky cruise variants trying to scrape over the mountains? High above the chaos, American F-15E jets were already circling, their advanced radars tracking every move. They dropped AIM-120 air-to-air missiles like they were swatting mosquitoes. 3 Iranian weapons were blasted into the ocean, their wreckage sinking into the dark water along with the hopes of the people who built them. By 2:21, the handful of rockets that actually survived the upper atmosphere entered the final danger zone. This is where the C-RAM systems went to work. Imagine a mechanical beast vomiting 4,500 pieces of 20mm lead every 60 seconds. They threw up an actual wall of solid metal. 38 launched. 35 utterly pulverized. Only 3 slipped through that chaotic web of fire. They managed to clip a fuel storage tank and put a few dents in 2 parked jets. 13 Americans took some shrapnel, but not a single one died. Tehran wanted a historic slaughter. Instead, they got a masterclass in why you never bring a knife to a laser fight. They were nothing more than a swarm of angry flies buzzing around an armored giant. And this is where the real horror story begins for the attackers. You do not get to shoot at the United States and just go to bed. At 2:14, while the Iranian weapons were still hopelessly falling through the sky, American commanders had already rubber-stamped the total execution of Iran's missile infrastructure. America does not sit around waiting for politicians to write angry letters or debate over damage reports. Operation Desert Hammer was green-lit instantly. This was not a warning shot. It was a surgical removal of a threat. 60 miles off the coast, the aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower got the call. The orders were brutally simple. Weapons free. Destroy it all. Within minutes, the flight deck was a chaotic blur of heat and noise. 48 Super Hornet fighter jets catapulted off the ship. Each one was holding 4 JSOW glide bombs, 2 HARM anti-radiation missiles, and defensive weapons. That is nearly 200 highly intelligent bombs from just one ship. Back at Udeid, before the dust had even settled on the runway, 12 F-35A stealth jets cut through the smoke, carrying Stormbreaker bombs meant to hunt down anything that moved from miles away. Out over the Arabian Sea, 3 massive B-1B Lancer bombers received their coordinates. Carrying 72 stealthy JASSM-ER cruise missiles in their bellies, these terrifying machines can wipe out 24 locations without ever showing up on an enemy radar screen. And deep underwater, hidden in the pitch black of the Persian Gulf, 6 nuclear submarines including the USS Virginia, USS Hawaii, and USS Missouri opened their tubes. 120 Tomahawk weapons burst through the ocean surface, leaving trails of white smoke as they sprinted toward the coast. The enemy threw 38 rocks and hoped for the best. America threw nearly 1,000 pieces of pinpoint destruction to make absolutely sure the enemy could never throw a rock again. But before the first bomb landed, the United States military completely blinded their opponent. At 2:20, 8 EA-18G Growler planes jammed every single enemy radar screen. The screens just filled with useless static. Right behind them, 96 HARM missiles hunted down the radar dishes themselves. In barely 2 minutes, the entire early warning grid within a 200-kilometer circle was permanently silenced. The S-300 batteries they bragged so much about were now just heavy, useless blocks of metal. Iranian commanders were screaming into dead radios, totally helpless under the punishing sun. The sky was wide open, and the hammer was coming down. At 2:25, the retaliation found its targets. 944 American precision weapons started cashing in their coordinates. 12 stealth missiles from the Lancer bombers turned the Karamabad base into a sprawling fire pit. Launch pads were erased. Command buildings folded up like paper. Over at Kermanshah, 16 Tomahawks from the submarines smashed straight through the reinforced concrete roofs. The attackers thought hiding underground would save them, but American bunker busters turned those tunnels into blazing furnaces. The entire base was wiped off the map in a blink. Desful and Tabriz got hit with 48 guided bombs from the Super Hornets. The airstrips were chewed up so badly they looked like the surface of the moon. Antennas, trucks, and equipment were buried under tons of rubble. While the grunts on the ground were running for their lives, the stealth jets slipped deep into the heart of the country to hit the manufacturing plants in Isfahan and Parchin. 96 Stormbreaker bombs completely shredded the assembly lines. Decades of planning and billions of dollars in machinery were reduced to worthless scrap metal in seconds. They will not be building anything new for a very long time. Finally, the massive Stratofortresses arrived to drop 288 heavy GPS-guided bombs on 12 airstrips and 8 fuel refineries. The explosions were so impossibly violent that earthquake monitors literally recorded shockwaves up to a 4 on the Richter scale. This was not a battle. It was a systematic deletion, a brutal unmaking of a military force. Look at the terrifying map. 38 Iranian rockets traded for 944 American smart weapons. 2,347 enemy soldiers lost their lives, while America lost absolutely no one. 16 major installations and 47 support sites were completely wiped from reality. By 2:59, exactly 44 minutes after the first shot was fired, the entire ordeal was over. In less time than it takes to watch an episode of your favorite television show, a nation permanently lost a military capability that took half a century to build. 35 of their rockets were turned into vapor, and the 3 that landed caused nothing more than property damage. Their grand plan to reshape the world ended up being the most humiliating backfire in modern history. When the smoke finally cleared over the water, one chilling truth remained standing in the ashes. The ultimate lesson of that blistering afternoon is terrifyingly simple. If you dare to reach out and strike the American giant, you will not live long enough to watch your own weapons land.